Either they love you, or they hate you, or they gon' judge you. It is what it is. 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 What up, world? Welcome to another great episode of Lingo Ink's Open Mindz. We have a wonderful, beautiful soul here, Afia. She is a marriage, family, life coach. We're here to talk about a foundation of mental health is really important for the community and for people that are dealing with mental health, especially in these times. I know it's hard for a lot of people. Uh, Make sure y'all check out the website www.lingoinkboutique.com. They're the ones sponsoring this show here. I have the day one line on right now, and we got the zodiac lines coming, affirmation lines, the I am line. Welcome Afia to the show. Give her a nice round of applause, everybody. Yeah, we turn up here, Afia. That's what goes on here on Open Mindz. Afia, we're so grateful and thankful to have you on the show. I want you to tell the people about your journey and how you got here, and then we'll go into what the people need to know.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my idea, as Jerry said, I'm a marriage and family life coach. I have a degree in marriage and family therapy, and I'm currently a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology. And what brought me to the space of mental health was my own personal journey with understanding where I came from and me figuring out that the best way to chart a future was to understand my past. And so I figured that I could hopefully give advice to people about how I've gone through that journey in hopes that they can take something from that.
That's very beautiful. So, what happened with your past, or that got you on this journey that you're like, I want to go and learn, about the mind and what's going on with people?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Jerry. So I have a belief that the foundation of mental health is made up of three pillars, which are the family, your relationship with one another, like your friends, your peers, and your relationship with yourself, that secret, intimate part of you that you don't really share with anybody else. And so when any one of those three pillars are weak or fragile, it makes the entire platform foundation a little bit insecure. And I learned this from, you know, I grew up in a family that was chaotic in a lot of ways. And so for me, I learned how to understand my role in my family and then how to take that role into that relationships with my friends. And then how did I accept that relationship within myself? And it's not an easy journey. That's taken a lot of time. It's part of the reason why I got my degree in psychology in the first place, because I really do feel like you have to engage in a deep work process of understanding your mental health. And that starts with coming to grips with certain truths about the way that you were raised and about the role that your family placed upon you. In particular, I feel like your first interaction with the world is through your family. So whoever you are, or whatever you seek to be, starts from what your parents or the people that are part of your family system, um, what space they allow you to be, if that makes sense.
It all makes sense. So basically, the reason why most people are messed up is because of their upbringing. That's what it sounds like to me. Ancestral, generational types of things that's going on, and that could have been, transferred from prior generations, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and do you feel like that has to do with like situations like mother or father could be going through also? Is just kind of the energies that they're dealing with, kind of transmuting to the child as well?
Oh, absolutely. Um, Humans were all creatures of energy. We're all absorbing and being impacted by our environment. And so when you grow up in a family where stress or tension is a part of the system, then you will grow up seeking stress and tension because that's the only way you can, in a weird way, might be the only way you can relax because it's normal to you, right? What 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 becomes normal to us becomes accepted by us. All right. So if we grow up in a family system that has normalized arguments, they've normalized fighting, they've normalized disagreements, then how are you as an adult going to, you're gonna understand communication through your family. Um, of course, sometimes you can have, as an adult or older, you can have relationships with other people who may want to inform your viewpoint in different ways, right? Maybe you grow up and your best friend has the total opposite family that you have, and they don't yell and scream at each other to solve their disagreements, right? They talk to one another with patience and understanding. And so you look at that experience and then you reflect on your home experience. And if there's an incongruence, you try to figure out why that is. And that's where the self comes in. The self makes a judgment based off of what they feel fits their need for that moment. And so as you grow up and you come more and more into yourself, you will hopefully harness things that are going to be positive for you, things that are going to be resources for you, things that are going to be strengths for you. But that's a subjective experience. Some people may find that the only strengths, the only resources that they've harnessed is arguments, blaming, guilt, manipulation, because that's what's normalized in their family system. And they sought other relationships that continue to um, uh, uh, sort of reverberate the same influence.
So I I know that children are sponges, so
Mhm.
they soak in everything, and I feel like a lot of parents, they're going through their own thing, and they maybe subconsciously don't even know what they're doing to the child.
Mhm.
So much going on in this paradigm here, in this realm here. So I can only imagine. So what are your thoughts about like mommy and daddy issues?
Oh, I think that's a great question, Jerry. I think that we have to understand there's a theory of thought in psychology about families, and it's called family systems therapy. And it basically makes a point, or sorry, to backtrack. In this segment of therapy, there's a series of thought, Bowen in therapy, that talks about generational trauma, generational histories, and basically it makes an argument that your your parent doesn't parent you; they parent the way they wish their parents raised them, right? So you are paying for your grandparents' sins. Whatever they didn't do, your parents are kind of trying to foster that on you. And so that does sometimes create dynamics of frustration because let's say your mom and your grandmother disagreed about what type of activities you could enjoy, right? You wanted to be a tomboy. Your grandmother wanted her daughter to be a princess, and she forced her daughter to be a princess. When that daughter grows up, what more likely is she going to force on her child? If she has accepted the princess role that her, she will continue to force that role on her child because she doesn't want that child to have an experience different from her own. If, however, she resents as an anger towards the mom for putting her in a role she didn't feel comfortable with, she will push her child to do something she may want to do. Continuing the cycle. You see, in both ways, the cycle's continued because you're not allowing the child to tell you what they need. You're trying to fulfill your own needs in your child. That's where a lot of mommy and daddy issues, in my estimation, start. By you trying to fulfill your own needs that your parents weren't able to fill with your child.
So basically, it sounds like expectations of what the parent wants for the child, and I guess I'm missing where the correlation of the issues is coming from, because they're trying to like impress or like please their parent, and
Correct.
they can never do it. So is that where the
Correct.
issues come from? Like they never
Correct.
really had that bond. Like oh my, just like you said, like it could be like my, you know, if you're a girl, my mom wanted me to be a ballerina, but I was never a ballerina, and I can't, and you know, or well, my
Right.
dad wants me to be a
But-
football player, but I'm really an architect. Damn.
right.
And that's the distinctive where the issues come from, mommy daddy issues. So when it
Mhm.
comes to relationship with others, do you feel like that people try to bring that to other people, like people that they're dating or something like that, and they're kind of bringing those issues subconsciously and not even knowing it? And that's where a lot of people are like, damn, you got some mommy daddy issues or something. Like you never got a hug for anything that you've done or something like that. Is that where it comes from?
Absolutely. I think that again, product of our environment. In the argument of nature versus nurture, I come down a little bit more on the nurture side than the nature side, because I think that your environment has genetic impacts down the line. You know, it's just a matter of what becomes normalized to you. So if you are seeing yourself placed in roles where, let's say you're the caregiver in your family, right? Let's say your parents worked a lot, they had 3 kids, you were the oldest, you took care of the family all the time. When you get into a relationship, you're gonna want to assume that same role. You know, you're gonna want to be the caretaker because that's the way that you see your identity, and you may or may not get some intrinsic value out of that. That's the point of this whole, right? When we're thinking about our foundation of mental health, we're really asking ourselves, what internally, what intrinsic value am I getting out of this experience with my family, this experience with my friends, and this experience with myself? And if we're not getting an intrinsic, getting something negative, something harmful, then of course we're going to feel a little fragile. We're not going to feel secure. We're not safe.
Right. And it's
And
interesting.
so when you're going to try you're going to create environments that are best to fulfill need,
Right.
right? If you're a kid in your family, you're not going to date a guy that makes you feel used, because that's not congruent with your,
Uh,
that makes sense.
it does. I think your phone is like chopping up just a little bit. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
About that.
No, it's like I hear you, but it's just like little words that's coming in and out. Um, so it's one thing that was very interesting about mental health, like with the mommy issues, is like a lot of like how you call the people that murder people a lot, like
Serial killers.
serial killers. A lot of them had mommy issues. Like
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get love from their mother, and a lot of them, it's already like documented. And
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts about that?
Oh wow, that is a really great question. So I have a little interest in forensic psychology. That's what the field would be called when you want to kind of go into understanding the why behind people committing crimes. Um, and we call that pathology, right? What went wrong? What disorder caused this person to do that? The thing is with serial killers is there a special component of the human whereas we might call them a psychopath or a sociopath, right? Those are specific terms we use those very generally, but those are specific terms to describe specific types of people who lack an ability to, right? When you lack an ability to connect, so you and me, we just met on Clubhouse, right? We heard each other speak, we connected to what we were hearing from each other, and then from that, this whole thing was created, right? Just from hearing each other's voices, we connected. People who tend to be serial killers lack the ability to connect.
Because
Whether that
to their
from
mother.
Right. Whether that comes from their environment or whether it's from something genetic within them, we're not sure. We really can't tell. It is interesting that some uh, some serial killers did have relationships with their mother, but for Ted Bundy, apparently his mom loved him and never believed that he was a serial killer, but I think she was abusing, and I do believe that hurt people hurt people. So when there is harm being done, that can have serious consequences on the rest of the world because it can create breaks. If they're young enough, if the child is young and they haven't yet learned, because empathy is learned, sympathy is learned, love is learned, hate is learned, respect is learned. Young, and you're breaking down that child's ability to learn those emotions or feel safe, then you can create environments where apathy develop instead of compassion. And that can happen in women dominated home situations and dominated home situations. Yeah, that is my opinion.
So, so as far as women are concerned, and as far as the daddy issues, it's the same thing. They're not getting this attention from their dad, so they're seeking out attention from men, from other men. Um, whether that's sexually or emotionally or anything. And they're just looking for like that care, right? That
Absolutely. I think we're all looking for that, right? That attachment, that like you said, care seeking, attachment seeking. We're all looking for an ability to have our needs met, right? I think people forget at before we can get into sort of higher processes of functioning, higher thoughts like love and self actualization and self acceptance. We need a lot of physical things met first. One is safety, right? One is shelter, food, physiological component. You can't fall in love if you're always hungry. You can't be compassionate if you're always tired. Those are things that you have to secure and constantly secure, or you can get your brain to work higher and work stronger. So if you're in an environment, and then again, it kind of goes back to the whole family, right? If you're in an environment where you're not being nourished, if you're in an environment, think of it like a garden. If you're trying to plant fire on a garden, but you don't nourish, you don't take care of it, you don't weed it, you don't put the love and TLC in it, it's not gonna bloom.
So basically, that makes somebody go seek that out in other ways,
Absolutely.
other people,
Absolutely.
as uh, substance abuse or other people in negative ways, and almost any shape, form, fashion. Um, so that brings to me like mental illness, like when we talk about schizophrenia, bipolar. What's the other one? Schizophrenia, bipolar. Isn't there another one? But there's different types of mental illness. Do you,
Mhm.
as far as mental illnesses like schizophrenia, clinically mental illness, bipolar, and all that, do you feel like that's like chemical imbalance, or that has to deal with uh, coming from the home as well, triggers? I don't know, or like do you feel like that's just like a brain development type of thing? What are your thoughts about that, like schizophrenia and bipolarism and all that type of stuff?
So that's a really great question. There's some great research being done on this topic as we speak, as to sort of the sort of origin of a lot of these disorders. There is a genetic component. Um, Also a nature component to it. When you're thinking about serious illnesses, not even just serious illness, even anxiety, depression, things that you would consider run of the mill, there is a bit of a genetic component to it, but also an environmental component to it. And it sort of is a symbiotic relationship because again, I'm talking about, if you think about it, at one point we were all in our, like when we're eggs, tiny little embryos, we were all in our grandparents, grandmothers, um, womb system. You feel me? Because when our grandmother was giving birth to our mother, we were also there, our egg, that whole thing. So when there's stress, when there's tension, it all feeds and transmutes onto the child, and that continues to on and on to be the genealogical links.
Mm.
At the same time, that then creates a brain development of perhaps a genealogy, or there could be a unique chemical imbalance, where your brain is not getting enough neurotransmitter to process the information or the hormones appropriately to fit the situation. When it comes to the diseases like bipolar, there is so much we don't know about the brain and about what goes on um, in the brain during people who are having episodes, and they do so much research to try to get an answer, but really just don't know. And that's kind of the beauty of person psychology, is that a lot of this is supposition, but we have created evidence-based practices to test these suppositions, and they've come back very, very with good results. We kind of have created a theory, and we think this may be a reason why people act the way that they do, but it's not the only reason why people act the way that they do. And in my case, I like to take a very integrative and holistic approach to understanding a person, because thing. And that's where I come back to my pillars of mental health. You're not just your family, you're not just your friends, and you're not just yourself. You're a combination of all three. And if you don't know how to balance those out appropriately, you're gonna find yourself thinking under one or the other, or the other.
That's a great explanation. Do you feel like trauma has to deal with some of these things and to lead to mental like these types of schizophrenia? Like, oh, but some children don't have trauma. They're just kind of like, what's going on with this child? They just kind of already have it. What do you feel about that?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to the idea that sometimes there are a nature component to these disorders. Trauma disorders, are a lot of them have to do with the ability to feel safe, and the ability to not feel safe, right? So when we're having there's a psychology called active child experiences, ACE. And when you have active child experience, more likely to develop trauma response, because with all things, our body wants to keep us alive, our body wants to keep us safe. And when your body is spreading so many hormones through your brain in order to get you safe, feel safe, that is going to change the shape of your brain. Why? Because the child is still developing. We're all still developing. Your prefrontal cortex, this area, is your prime location for decision making, judgment, and impulse control. It does not fully form until the age of 25. So you think about it, right? Sometimes you think about how hot tempered and hot headed guys can sort of be. And then they kind of grow up in their teenage years, they're very, very passionate, very, very hot tempered. But then by the time they reach 25, 26, it's like a totally different guy, right? They're much cooler, way more relaxed, way more chill. Why is that? Because your prefrontal cortex has had the chance to fully develop, fully form, and now you're thinking before reacting. Hopefully. But if you're in a trauma, if your brain is constantly under stress, it's constantly telling you that you can't focus on other things because you have to remain safe, you're not creating an environment for your brain to learn. So it's not going to be equipped to handle higher processes of information. It's only going to be equipped to handle trauma and stress, because that's the only thing it's been exposed to.
Mm. So When it comes to society outside of the home, what do you feel like that plays a part on like mental health?
Oh yeah, I think society plays a huge part of mental health because that's another pillar, right? Your relationships with your peers, and that comes into all the media that you're consuming, all the information that you're talking to your friends. They're telling you this, you're telling you that. You're finding out things about your friends that are exposing you to different experiences that can kind of hopefully help you grow and mature. You know, you hopefully are being influenced by your system, your relationship environment, but sometimes you can be influenced in a negative way, and that comes from the foundation your parents and family have set up for you. If they set you up in a safe and nurturing and loving environment, going to be more outgoing, more likely to engage in the friendship dynamics, more mutual and flexible with friendship dynamics, because you're gonna learn growing up that the world is a trustworthy place and the people in it are trustworthy. But if you're growing up in an environment where your family is feeling sources of fear, sources of stress, sources of, you're gonna go out into the world expecting tension, stress, and fear. It's going to make you less trustworthy. It's going to make you more cautious. It's going to make you have struggle and be a little bit more introverted when, because you've been told by your first, at least, your primary caregivers, your first introduction to the world, that it's an unsafe place. Now, of course, you go out with your daycare. Maybe you meet an outgoing person and they draw you in and they show you, hey, the world's not such a scary place. And then you have to go into yourself and make sense of that, right? Because your family told you the world was a very scary place, but your friends are telling you the world is not a very scary place. What do? That's where your self comes in, right? Because now you're critically thinking about the values and benefits of both.
Exactly. So one thing that I feel like that's going on, especially in society in the United States, is narcissism.
Mm,
What are your thoughts about narcissism and how it plays a role today in our society?
absolutely. That's a really great question. So I think that there's a really big difference between clinical narcissism and what I see happening in today's. What I see happening in today's society is a need for validation because we've created a system that rewards validation. So we're only feeding the system that has been created to reward people who feed it. You know, versus someone who's a clinical narcissist um, can't handle the possibility that they're ordinary. It's like psychologically a blank space for them. They can't conceive of a moment or a time or an instant where they're the best or the center of the attention. And if anyone were to try to shake them of that thought, they would completely crumble. Their ego can't handle it. It's an ego defense mechanism. Whereas I feel like with society today, um, they are very much trying to feel loved, trying to feel wanted. Um, the narcissist doesn't need those things. He just glorifies them, right? They don't actually want from you except for you to think that they're amazing. And if you were to give them love, they recoil from it because they don't know how to handle it. Whereas I think social media, they want it so much, they bathe in it. They do a lot of crazy things for it.
Yeah, it's they do a lot of things for, I guess, being a narcissist, and I almost feel like a lot of people, the way the society is formed, they don't even know that they are narcissists. That's
Mm.
the funny, and that's the funny part about it. It's not funny, but It is, you know, it's comical, but because of the unknowing. So when we talk about society, um, I know, you know, a good probably 20, 30 years ago, we used to have mental health facilities, and now they seem to be just disappearing. And you see a lot of mental health, you know, people with mental health issues out in the streets, abandoned. What are your thoughts about that? Like, just the lack of resources for mental health these days for people.
I think that's a really great question, Gary. Um, that was pretty near and dear to my heart too. I really would say that there's a lack. There's just a lack of education, right? The resources can access those resources are a real problem. There's a real disconnect between getting these people who are in serious need of mental health services and then matching them with places that can support. I'm actually a proponent of something that, mental health is just as important as physical health. And instead of having this system where you have to go seek out a mental health specialist, you should be able to walk into any doctor that you see, any primary care specialist that you see, and have somebody be on staff who is a mental health specialist in some way, shape, or form, or has an ability to instantly refer you to that makes it less onerous, less of a hardship on the person, right? Because if I'm depressed, if I'm anxious, if I'm sad, if I'm struggling, am I really going to be able to devote the resources to go find a community service center to support me, or just just bore my head down and kind of just work through it? I'm more than likely to kind of just work through, especially in right. We're designed in the Black community to push away and normalize stress, tension, and anger, and we sometimes believe part of our identity, that's part of our experience, and it's not. You're not supposed to feel sad all the time, and when you do, you should find someone to talk to because it might really help improve your quality of life and your sense of of your quality of life. But we don't normalize that process. We don't normalize medicine for people, and this is medicine. Okay, in my estimation, I might do with someone who's struggling is just as important as what a medical doctor does when they give you a pill or they do an exam. I'm healing your mind. I'm helping your mind. I should giving you tools to heal your mind. And that's so important because since we don't see it, we sometimes forget how important it is to every step of our process.
Thank you for that explanation. So this is I feel like it's my own question because I'm learning and just growing as an individual, even spiritually. And I remember one time I had like an epiphany with myself, and you know how you see somebody that in, you know, Western culture may deem as schizophrenic if they're talking to themselves, right? But in a spiritual sense, like, you know, there's people that have spiritual gifts, right?
Yes.
And they can talk, they can see, they can smell, they can hear stuff that are not from this realm. And I had an epiphany with myself because I'm like, you know, what about what if these people are actually like really super gifted and have a gift to see and to talk to, you know, other realms on a daily. But if someone says, if you say, hey, you know, what is that person talking about? Or somebody says, oh my gosh, you don't see that thing right there? It's talking, it's looking at you right now. We deem that person crazy, but we don't go in a spiritual sense that they may have a gift and they may not know how to hone their gift, and they might frighten them too, especially if
Hmm.
people are telling them, you're talking to yourself, you're seeing things, you're crazy. So now they start fighting it. No, I'm not seeing. You see, I see people doing this. No, I'm not seeing things. I'm not. And you see what I'm saying? So what are your thoughts about that? And then I'm gonna get on the medication right after that.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I would say that the schizophrenia is a very low percentage of people in this country suffer from schizophrenia. However, when it does come to people who suffer from schizophrenia, unfortunately,
Is
they're
that the clinical term for somebody that's talking to themselves or talking to other
it's
people?
one. It's one. You don't have to be schizophrenic. We call them hallucinations or delusions, right? You don't be diagnosed with schizophrenia to suffer from hallucinations or delusions. There are a lot of different reasons why you may be having those types of symptoms. That could be due to medication, that could be due to illicit substances, or that could be due to a chemical imbalance in your head, or it could be due to, as you said, I'm not someone who's going to not spiritual lens, because again, I believe in integrative thought. I believe that all things are possible with the human body, mind, and the human spirit. The issue that comes into place with mental health is your ability to function. And that is a key component of criteria diagnosis. When we're looking at the criteria for diagnosis of someone, we're looking at, lastly and most important, how are these symptoms impacting that person's day-to-day function? And so that's where you can sometimes find on between those who are having a spiritual experience and those that are having something that is more of a internal imbalance that is interfering with their ability to connect with the rest of the world. So I've noticed like people who, maybe consider themselves mediums or tarot card readers or any type of spiritual connection with the other side, is they all seem able to differentiate and delineate the spirit world from the regular world. For the ones who can't or struggle to, that the decompensation makes them a danger to them. If you've worked with people who suffer from hallucinations and delusions and dementias, the worst part about it, unfortunately, is the danger that they pose to themselves to compensate. They necessary, not all, but in a lot of cases, if they're not medication, if they're not getting something to help regulate, they're not really able to engage in the process like you and I engage in the activities of daily living. And that's where I would probably draw the line, thinking about how I'm helping people is, well, how are they functioning? I'm not in the boat of trying to mess up what's helping you get by. If this is helping you get by, then it would be a detriment. Like, I would be doing you harm to take away your coping mechanism without replacing it with something else, without giving you something else to help you get by. So I have to understand what you're utilizing to help you get by before I can make any impressions or judgment calls about it. But if they're not able to get by, if they're actively struggling to get through the day, then you have to, for their good, place them in situations they're not a danger to.
I almost feel like, so we have, like you just mentioned earlier, there's the spiritual people, and maybe they have an understanding, or they hone their powers, maybe early
Mm-hmm.
on. And they say like this: if the family is conditioned to not to believe in these types of things, right? And say a child has these gifts, and like, think about you being in a realm where like me and you are talking to each other, right? But say that you had these special gifts and you had a whole bunch of people right next to you, but I can't see them all the time. And then you couldn't tell the difference if like me and you talking versus you and some person next to you, and you're like, hey, no, hey, stop, don't do that. Like, what are you doing over? Like, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
and then for other people to come and be like, whoa, what's going on with you? And then you're like, it kind of like puts you, like compacts you into this like box. And I almost feel like the ones that cannot discern the type of powers they probably have the most powers because they can't turn it off.
Right.
And there's some people that it's not even, it's like, when you come conscious of it, like I could be like, I could see three people right here with me, right? And I could mention it to you, like, yo, Ophelia, you don't see these people? And you're like, Jerry, what is going on with you? So right there, I could discern, like, oh, snap. You know what I'm saying? Something's
Right.
going on here, and Ophelia can't see it, but I'm aware. And
Right.
so at that moment, they can discern and know how to, like, okay, and I could go try it on somebody else, and then that's when I know what I'm dealing with here, and I'm able to understand and hone it the way that I'm able to hone it. Some people are living in that reality that they almost think that you're playing around with them because you can't see what they're seeing, and they just reacting in a full engagement in a whole nother dimension, possibly. You see what I'm saying? And then all
Right.
of a sudden, somebody's like, all right, come over here, just slow it down, come get this needle, right? Or this medication. And then that's why I want to go into the medication because, these
Well,
medications, oh, go ahead.
I mean, no, I see your point, and I definitely think, there's a discussion to be had about that. But again, it comes back down to, in the situation that you're describing, this person is able to articulate both experiences, right? Their auditory experience of people that are knowing me, and then their ability to explain that to you in a coherent manner that you can digest, right? When someone, and again, the criteria for diagnosing somebody with a hallucination or delusion or any significant disorder is not just based off of their having the sensations of talking or visually or tactile things. There are other components of it that you have to go through for a significant amount of time, because it is a serious label to put on a person, and it sometimes does come with medication compliance issues, because when that person starts having those sensory experiences. So okay, in your estimation, in your example, you are thinking of somebody who is going to be having a positive relationship with the spirit that may be giving them information or responding to them or helping them or saving them in some positive way. Most of the time with people with these illnesses or disabilities who get seen on the medical side, who get seen by me, or people who are like me, is because they're not actually having experiences that are pleasant. They're having experiences where voices are telling them to harm people. The voices are so insistent and so unsettling, or so constant, that person can't function. That person can't drive. That person can't communicate with me because they're so caught up in their communication in their head. And that influences may be harming them because they're stopping their ability to have a functional sense of life. And in that sense, perhaps that's where we might include medication, because we're just trying to get that person to come back down to have a normal sense of life. Unfortunately, people with these types of uh, disabilities have a distrust of medication. So it's very difficult for them to be compliant. Therefore, it's very difficult for them to arrest the progression of disorder after a certain amount of time.
So that was very interesting that you said that because that leads me into my next thought. So you mentioned somebody in a positive, right? Versus somebody in a negative situation. So now we go on frequencies and energies and vibrations. So now, when we go back to the home, right? And we talk about the family, right? So now, if you think about religion, right? Like Christianity or anything like that, like they kind of deem that what they call it crazy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
look at
Mm-hmm.
the when you look at the vibration and the connotation of the word crazy, it's a low vibration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like when you tell a child they're not good enough, right? That's a spell that they put in on that child, right? So now let's take a child, right, that are having these situations. They may have at first been like, oh, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things, right? And then when they go out in the world or at home and somebody labels them with these low vibrational words, they're casting spells on this person. Now they're in a constant. Do you see how this is going right now?
I understand, and I agree with with your premise, that words have an extreme amount of power. Um, but I would say that, because in a sense we would never call someone crazy. Um, just don't use that terminology. It is a little bit disrespectful
No, no, no.
to your
I'm not.
population.
I'm not saying that you, as a professional, are saying that,
Right.
but people that are ignorant, and when I mean ignorant, is not in a negative way, just lack of knowledge, lack of knowing, right? When they don't know and they go off a perception of what they feel is the labeling that they're doing, they place that on the person, and that person takes that curse on. And I actually, and they'll say to themselves, "Oh, I'm not the the label that." And the connotation, because you know what negative entities do? They feed off of fear, they feed off of
Yeah.
depression. They feed off of these low vibrational types of things. So it was very interesting when you mentioned that the people that are in almost a high vibration, they're able to discern and you know what I mean, and have like a shape to shape themselves to hone in those powers. You know what I mean? To be able to like,
Hmm.
okay, I know when to whatever. I'm aware that I can see these things in a social setting, and I'm not going to react because I understand that everybody can see. But when you put these low vibration, that even a person that doesn't have all these gifts, right? Because I call them gifts.
Right.
They don't have all these gifts, right? And if they're in the low vibrational stuff, they may most likely have a shadow person come visit them in the middle of the night because of the
Hmm.
fear, the depression. They may have, you know what I mean? They can have these things too, like because they that fear. That's what low vibrations feed off of, like these low vibrational entities, especially in the spiritual world. They feed off of the fear, depression, sadness, anger. So think about somebody that society deems as not there, cool, 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 right? Even these types of things that I'm doing, right? If it's sent on somebody, what do you think their vibration, you see what I'm saying? Now they're
Hmm.
lowering, right? Low vibrations themselves. Now they stuck in a constant loop where they're just like, you see what I'm saying? There's no in and out of it because their powers are so strong that it's kind of hard to get out of that. And then when you talk about medication, Western medication, which is to me it's like poison. I'm just gonna keep it 1,000. These are chemicals. So anything not natural to the body. And the thing is, I'm not knocking Western medication in a full, but we have to be conscious to understand. Like when we watch a television commercial, that most of the commercial is side effects. I mean, let's just keep it
Hmm.
1,000. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
of course, these people are having hard problems dealing with these spiritual gifts. I call them, and and then when they take these things, they're almost more afraid of the medication than the spirits themselves. Like I've seen people run away, like, and they don't want to take it, and then so they're stuck in this like, it's ooh, man, it's
I mean,
it's tough.
and just in in my personal experience, in the things that I've seen and the things that I've done in the work with certain populations that I've worked with, it all comes down to a safety component, right? When you have some of the times when you have a lot of these discussions, we sort of have them in an abstract way where you're living in a world where we have the perfect resources to support that person so that they can hopefully, be able to have a comfortable existence.
Right, and that's where the
And
evaluations come in, right?
right,
Right.
some do and some can, and there's degrees of severity when it comes to certain types of disorders. So if you're having something of a mild case or moderate case, you're obviously going to be in a better position to handle certain things and compensate in a lot of different ways than if you're a severe case. A severe case of anything is going to be a struggle to maintain. So when you have people who are dealing with severe cases who are struggling to maintain a quality life, a quality existence, the concern becomes the danger that they pose not only to themselves but to other individuals, because they're unable to recognize what's real from
Or,
what's
or understand the knowledge, because I believe most of the families can't even. So I have a question for you, right? Because schooling, right, is just education is what you're taught, right? It's what you're taught, right? Um, this could be for your own personal, right? Do you feel like that people in school, mental therapists, and you're currently going for what now again? So the people can.
uh, psychology,
What is it again? Because it kind of broke up.
a doctorate in clinical psychology.
Clinical psychology. So the time I've been here on this physical plane, right? Like I grew up religious. I never really had no spiritual experiences until I did plant medicine called ayahuasca, and I had a real spiritual awakening. So other than that, I wasn't able to discern anything, ghost or I don't know. I hear about these things, but I never was able to discern. So, and I know like the construct of the way society's placed in religion and all that, and there's some people that felt the Holy Spirit, and you know what I mean. The case in that,
Hmm.
I want to know for you, even in your so far in your clinical trials and all that. Well, I guess it depends on the person if they had spiritual experience. If you're able to discern whether, I know there's a certain point where it's like you mentioned the safety, like to the point it's like we can't even have a conversation because they're just not here. They're just if
Correct.
it's I mean not here, like they're in another dimension. They're fighting like dragons and all type of stuff at this point. Like hey, like no, not like there's a certain point where it's like where can this person go? I understand that, but is there like I feel like if somebody is more like spiritual in on the education route, that maybe at a certain point they could discern whether if it's spiritual or if it's really like you bumped your head when you was really hard at 5 years old.
The problem is that when you're dealing with when you get into the realm of needing a mental health diagnosis and you get it into the realms of certain criterias, we're very selective when we're trying to figure out what you're dealing with, right? And unfortunately, we're not trying to have people who are having illusions or delusions where people are telling them positive things, where people will tell them loving things, where people are helping them. We're not in the process. Um, the ones that we're looking at are ones where the voices are telling you, um, that person wants to harm you, that person's jealous of you, don't trust that person, be scared. These are harm inducing um, um, sensations, sensory experiences, right? It sounds like you had a positive, calm, healing experience that has informed you in thinking that more of them would be good because that one was pleasant. Unfortunately, for some of these individuals who are struggling and are needing services that I would provide, they're not having positive experiences. I can very much assure you. Unfortunately, I've never worked with someone who struggles with these type of um, illnesses that are having positive experiences.
Right.
Because just because the nature of what is stopping them from being able to tell what's real and what isn't. And once you're unable to discern, even when you were having your experience, and now that you're out of that experience, I would pretty much say that you have a good grasp of what is real and what isn't real. Um, the people that would need the type of medication that you're talking about, or who would need the type of resources that are more acute, daily living type resources, functioning assistance, mental health resources, they have really the line between what's real and what isn't has degraded so much that they are incapable of keeping themselves safe.
Right. Okay. So let's so those types, let's take them out of this, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
say just say like somebody that's functional already, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're starting to like hear these voices and all that, and obviously I feel like if they're coming to see you or anybody, right? I think the fear is what led them, period. So
Right.
someone comes in and they're like, hey Afia, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? This and that. What's going on? I don't know. I'm hearing voices and this and that. I really don't know what's going on. Can you discern to be like, this is spiritual or you're having a real mental, you're losing it? Can you discern
So
and tell somebody that? Like, it just seems like you got
it's
some spiritual gifts, and you just have to ground yourself and see how to go about it.
it's a subjective experience. You definitely want to hope that the person that is helping you or giving you information has a history with whatever it is that you're coming in with. You always want to do and this is again when I come back to the idea of there's not so much of a lack of resources, there's a lack of access to resources, because it can be very hard to find out. You may look up a therapist in your area and you come up with great names and they got great reviews, but they only work with depression and anxiety. They've never worked with hallucination, illusions, or type of sensory type experiences. And so they may not be sensitive to your needs. They may try to pre-label you, right? You want to make sure that you have someone who's going to be competent enough to know the right questions, to know the right tests, to know the right measures, to make sure that whatever they give you at the end of your intake evaluation is as appropriate to what is going on for you as possible. But again, with mental health therapy and mental health treatment, my advice and my coaching would be, we're not in the mode of trying to label you. We're not in the mode of trying to convince you that you have a problem. It's all about how you see what's happening, what you're experiencing in relation to your ability to function. So that person has come to us because while they're perhaps having a great time with these voices, it's impeded them in some way to the point that they came to us. And I would listen. In my example or estimation, I might listen to them. I'd hear all their concerns, all their fears. I'd want to normalize. Your first thing you want to do with any person who comes to you and they're afraid is to de-escalate the fear and normalize the word. Because we all go through times when we're worried. We all go through times when we're scared. And then we look into it. We say, okay, there are certain tests, there are certain measures. No one is just diagnosed schizophrenic or paranoid schizophrenic or with any other dementia, delusions, or hallucination disorders, because they're very serious types. You want to make sure you're getting a lot of information from a lot of different sources for a certain period of time before that person meets a criteria for a diagnosis. But if someone comes to me, or anybody, honestly, I would say my estimation and my uh, coaching advice would be, if you go to somebody and you sit them down, you say, I sometimes hear voices. They tell me pretty pleasant things. I don't drink. I don't drive. I don't drink. I don't drug. Everything's fine. I'm not, I'm only here because I know it's weird, but I'm not concerned about it. And that person, that person you went to immediately wanted to label you, I would be concerned. I would not want someone who's going to immediately label me. You should want somebody who's going to want to collaborate and communicate with you. Because when you start labeling people, you are extending the stigma of shame. And that's not something that's not something I would want to do with that I work with.
So I guess my next question is, so when I hear hallucinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people really do have these gifts that, because hallucination to me is just like, it's almost like a thought in the subconscious mind playing games or something. But there's real spiritual like attacks on people, and like I don't think they talk about that in Western medicine, right? They don't talk about spirituality and spiritual attack, right? They don't talk about that, right? They
No,
label them.
and I can't speak for medical professionals, right? But for mental health,
Do they talk about
absolutely,
that in the schools?
part of our training,
Oh,
part of our training, and that's what I'm saying about that when you go seek to deal with some of these concerns, that you're figuring out what they're competent in, right? If you're working with someone who doesn't have experience or doesn't have certification in these fields, then they may not be willing to entertain you, and you will feel judged, and you're less likely to get better in any particular way. Whether that is getting better with you, at the end of the day, your coach, the person that's working with you in a mental health setting, shouldn't be trying to throw their uh, impression of your life onto you. It is for you to give us an explanation of what you need, and for us to provide you with those tools as best as we can to fulfill that need. So if you come to me and you say, I want the voices to stop, I need the voices to stop, then I'm going to try my best to help you in that scenario. But if you come to me and you say, the voices are fine, everything's cool, I just have to do a better job of not reacting to it because it's messing up my day, nobody else gets it.
right,
Okay, how can I help you with that, right? But if that's not the response you're getting from your partner in this experience, and it should be a partner, it should be a collaboration, a facilitator, a guider, but you should be working hand in hand, side by side on the same page, then you should not be. You're not going to get better if you go into therapy or you go into any treatment setting resisting what is being offered. Resistance only helps in exercise.
right.
It doesn't necessarily help in healing.
So, so this is where I'm on like the line, right? Because, um, like I love like the diagnosis and the breaking down of Western like medicine therapy, right? But when it comes to like the medication, that's where I'm just like, what? So now, I think these days, right? We're in 2021 right now. Um, it's when it comes to these like spirituality, like you find more people going to like shamans and old traditional type of spiritual type of things when they're hearing voices now, because now it's becoming
I
more common. But there was a time where it's like you're hearing voices like, yo, put them in the room, put them in that padded room, and that was it.
right.
Now it's like you can go work it out, take some plant medicine and this and that. So I think like the best way is to have the mental therapist part about it, to break it down, and then have like if people like you and like spiritual like shamans and reiki healers can work together, this place would be amazing. But
Absolutely.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of the Western, because we understand about big pharma and all the money they want to make, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But that's just my whole thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't
Go ahead.
cut you off. I would just, I definitely see your point. agree that there needs to be more acceptance of Eastern or non-traditional practices of healing. I like a holistic model of healing because I'm like I said, I do therapy. I do treat clients in a way that's not medication. I don't give medication. Never
Right.
prescribed anything.
Just let
You
them know
know,
what it is and what they gotta do, like self care and
that
love
therapy,
and all that type of stuff.
yeah, therapy works. And in our experience, in psychology's experience, talk therapy has a real efficacy. But it's all about the client motivation. 80% of the work is done when the client gets out of the car and decides to work on themselves. But if you're not getting somebody who's motivated to work on themselves, then how are you going to see growth? How are you going to see distance? It's actively destroying any type of progress you could have. Um, of course, unfortunately, the history of psychology is through science. Okay, most the leading members of psychology started off as medical doctors. So there's always going to be a medical model, a medical component to the treatment of certain disorders and illnesses, because that's the way that respect was gained in our discipline, was through science and making it more evidence based. And so basically, when I say evidence based, I basically mean something that backing up its effectiveness. Um, and because we are a evidence-based society, that is where psychology has gone. But society transitioned to a more holistic, integrative Eastern approach to healing and treatment, then psychology will follow suit. Of course, you would want us to take the lead, and the more that we can have these conversations, the more that we can normalize these the spaces for people to have and they are being way more inclusive in areas. There has been more of a pushback to the medical model in recent years, in recent decades than before. But at the end of the day, money walks and money talks.
Yeah,
So,
money walks and money talks in Western capitalist society. But on a world standpoint, like on a loving standpoint, we as people, and I understand like this is my thing, right? Like I have LOVEE for you, and especially all for all people, but especially for the minorities and Western medication. I understand all the work and nights of tests and papers and all that, and I almost feel like it's apparent to see like what's going on out here, right? And we just talked about these other entities that are playing behind, and I know in my heart that like you and other people uh, are in the full right sense are doing things the best way you know of. I just feel like people. I almost feel like sometimes in the Western medicine, right, especially minorities, like I feel like you at a point you guys feel like you're getting attacked, right? And I will say it's not an attack per se on you because I LOVEE you, right? It's mostly attack on the institutions that taught you this stuff. And
mhm,
it's hard to really whatever because think about this, right? You spent your time and energy, right? Because energy is the real currency, right? And so all these
absolutely.
papers and all these type of stuff. So when you're looking at the science and the credible resources that they gave you, right? You're like you're fighting with that because I spent the time, I spent the years. You see where we start getting on to whatever, but we
Absolutely.
start looking at side effects and how it's not really helping. That's where it can kind of get whatever. And I think some people in the professional they have a great awakening because some of them you see them they was on this side and then they slightly went on this side because they see their patients are not getting what they came in knowing what they thought that they were giving their patients, and the patients get more sicker, and it's like, hold on, what's going on here? And then that kind of goes into the intuitive mind of the student, right? Like, I know I was taught all this, and this is not working. Why it's not? Now they're diving deep in that instead of just writing A, B, or C or synapses of the credible resources that they told everybody to learn. Do you see what I'm saying? So
I do see what you're saying too. And the thing that I always enjoyed about psychology in particular, there is no one theory discipline for an explanation of behavior, or explanation of how to treat certain behaviors.
well, I'm mostly getting on the. Sorry to cut you off. I'm mostly getting on like the medication wise because
Right.
you're
So when
like,
it comes
mm-hmm.
to that, I can't speak to the medicine part so much because, like I said, I'm not someone who does any type of
Right.
prescription medicine. Is all talk therapy. So I really can't. I can say that there's obviously.
Let me just take it out of all context.
Yeah,
Because,
I wish I could.
yeah.
But I don't.
No, we're gonna take that. That's gonna be something for somebody else that gives up. Because really quickly, really quickly, I mentioned all that because you have those that are not pharmacists, right? They went to school for what they're going to school for, and they're like, you see, they have these reps that come in and give them all these medications they don't know nothing about, and then they're like, oh, you have this, oh, well, this can deal with that. Well, here you go. And then they get that and decide, oh, you know what? I have another one for you. So,
right.
And then the distress comes from all the stuff that comes from that. So it's not, and people like, they get, no, I went to school for this, but this is much more deeper in the surface. But let's digress from that, and because you're not doing the medication, so we're past that.
Right. Exactly. I don't. Perfect. That part. I treat the part where you wanna talk it out.
Right.
And I'm here for you in a very non-judgmental space for you to talk it out. My goal is to hopefully be a mirror for your experiences so that you can process them in a way without fear. Because when you're scared, you're not processing. You're focused on surviving. You can't consume information other than what's needed for survival. Your stress is basically the same thing. You might equate it to the same senses. Your body doesn't know the difference between real fear and imagined fear, right? It's all going to react the exact same way. So if you don't know how to think and process during those experiences, whether you are in a situation to really be afraid of your life or just suffering from anxiety, and assume that there's a threat to yourself,
right.
your brain's gonna be sequestering itself to help you the best way it knows how. So you're not gonna be able to process a lot, and that's mental health treatment with men. Is that our goal is to help slow down that process of fear, engage in coping that help you decrease that experience. Because each time you go through an experience of fear, it's putting stress on your body. The more stress on your body, the more wear over time.
That's a fact. So,
right. So we can like bomb to that stress.
Right. So this was a great episode so far, but we're gonna wind it down because I know you got things to do, and you're a hardworking woman. And the real last thing, right now we're in 2020, and it's about the 3rd of February, 2021. My bad. A lot of people might be throwing stuff at the screen right now, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or Google, anything, you're probably throwing something at the radio when I said 2020, because everybody's trying to get past. We're already past that, okay, people? So give yourselves enough credit. But they're still going along with the whole rhetoric and the fear mongering of, I don't even like to say these low vibrational words of these sicknesses that they have going on. What can you tell people to keep themselves now? Because a lot of people are really going through it with this mental health stuff in these times because the whole world has shifted on them. And relationships are like deteriorating, and a lot of people have awakenings going on, and there's a lot of stuff. What can you, Afia, give to the people to leave them off with something that they can take on their journey?
Absolutely, that's a really great question, and I love to close with that. The best thing that I could say to help in these crazy times, we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, fear, and stress, is to find anchor. Right? You need something to center you into feeling calm and belonging. Whether that is taking that half an hour nap, whether that's taking a walk day, whether that's watching your favorite TV show. I myself am a football fan, so I really dive into writing and enjoying the football to cope with stress. I also read. You find coping skills to help you manage the that kind of distract you, take your mind. When you don't have the ability to distract your mind off of it, you kind of become closed of sort of a closed loop, feedback loop of your negative experience. You know, you have to have breaks. You have to have spaces where you can kind of get out of that loop and just be okay with existing and not have to strive so hard to do so things in order to feel alive. Um, so that's what I would say. And another what comes with that is a gratitude. It is never ever ever too late to start gratitude. And for those of the audience who are not familiar with a gratitude list, it's basically a way for you to acknowledge your blessings in this world. And it can be something as simple as you woke up this morning. I'm so grateful I opened my eyes because there are many people in this world who do not open their eyes today. I'm so grateful I have electricity. I'm so grateful I have running water. I'm so grateful I have food in my fridge. It's finding those things in your environment that make you feel that make you feel a little bit happy. And it doesn't have to necessarily be material things. You can be happy it's not raining. You can be happy that it's snowing. You can be happy that you feel the wind. You can be happy that you feel the sun. Just recognizing the beauty in the space around you can help you from experiencing all the stress that comes with that beauty.
That was so beautiful. I appreciate the words that you gave for the people. So it basically sounds like self care, self love, affirmations. Um, and that's what it comes down to, people, again and again and again. It's back to yourself, and to do things that make you whole for yourself, the energy light source being that you are. um, so Afia, where could the people reach you at? I know you do a lot of fun things for yourself. You're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're on Clubhouse, and where could they find you at?
Yeah, so I have a blog, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Clubhouse. It's all under the same username, according to Afia. If you can find me, if you are into sports, you wanna support sports. My blog has a couple of articles, according to Afia.com. I'm also, going to be starting up a mental health page as well to kind of give you guys a little bit more explanation, a little bit more detail to my theoretical foundation for uh, behavior and personality and of mental health.
Yes.
So that is according to Afia, on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and my blog.
And it's right there on the screen if you can't see it. If you listen on Spotify or any other podcast channels, Google, Apple, etc., it's at according to Afia, ACCORDINGTOAFUA, and it will be in the description of the episode wherever you're watching it at. Please get in contact with her. She has done the work. She's continued doing her work in her education with this, and to help out people in the world. So we always appreciate and send gratitude and love and peace to you, Afia, for not only the work that you've done for yourself, but the work that you're doing to help everybody else. Is truly honorable. And I want everybody to give Afia a nice round of applause before she. That was another great episode of Lingo Ink's Open Mindz. Make sure y'all tune in for the next episode. Make sure y'all going on www.lingoinkboutique.com. We have the latest exclusive apparel for men, women, and children. We're raising the vibration on Earth. This is the new Earth. This is what we want for ourselves and for our communities, our families, and the world. And that's where we're moving to, on that frequency and vibration. On that end, we'll see you then.
Absolutely. Yes.
You. Either they love you or they hate you, or they gon' judge you. It is what it is. 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 Being your own, living your truth. All these egos and pride got something to prove. I got my diva inside, cooped in a coop. Keep your feelings inside. I do what I do, I move how I move, choose what I choose. Third eye's active in motion, magnificent views. There's too many options, so much to choose. What is for me is just not what's for you. Vice versa, let it all go, most of it's not worth it. Just stay focused on your goals and life purpose. Be a student of this life and never stop learning. Never stop learning. Nah, there's some shit you just gotta accept. Your reality is created by the thoughts in your head. You.
Stay focused.
My mama told me stay focused.
My girl told me stay focused.
My girl told me stay focused.
My homie told me stay focused. Fuck what them haters say. Keep stacking that paper and kick them doors wide open.